Joining me now from Salt Lake City, Utah Senator Mike Lee, who has thrown out an intriguing name to replace Comey, President Obama's pick for the Supreme Court, Judge Merrick Garland. He's also the author of the new book, Written Out of History, which will be released the end of this month. Senator Lee, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you, Chris.
Let's start with the president's attitude towards the Russia investigation about possible interference in the 2016 election and possible links to the Trump world, as I'll put it. Here's what the president said this week.
I'll tell you this. If Russia or anybody else is trying to interfere with our elections, I think it's a horrible thing, and I want to get to the bottom of it.
But the president has sent several tweets this week. The Russia-Trump collusion story is a total hoax, he said in one. When will this taxpayer-funded charade end? Senator, as a former federal prosecutor, does that raise questions in your mind about this president's interest in getting to the truth?
Well, look, I don't think it's necessarily inconsistent to say that he doesn't think he's anything there, and to be willing, on the other hand, to allow the investigation to move forward. As far as I'm aware, he's fully cooperating, and he's willing and eager to see this investigation follow itself all the way through to wherever the facts may lead. He himself sounds confident that it's not going to lead anywhere that would be incriminating toward the campaign or toward himself. But I don't think that's inconsistent with allowing the investigation to do what it's there to do.
Even though he has already prejudged the entire investigation as a hoax and a charade.
Yeah, look, that might not be the best approach to take in any given moment, but again, it reflects the way he feels about the investigation. That said, it's important to remember that Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe said under oath this week there's been no effort to impede our investigation to date. I take him at his word, and I think that indicates that this investigation is moving forward.
Part of the problem, it seems to me, Senator, with what's happened this week is that originally the president and his team, including the vice president, said that this was all following the recommendation of the Attorney General, and then he, the president, undercut that and told a very different story. Let's take a look.
Accept the recommendation of the Deputy Attorney General and the Attorney General to ask for the termination, accepting the recommendation of the Deputy Attorney General.
I was going to fire Comey. My decision. It was not.
You had made the decision before they came in.
I was going to fire Comey.
Senator, does that raise any questions, any doubts in your mind about what was really going on here?
Look, I always want to be very careful to point out that I can't speak for another person. I especially don't purport to speak for the President of the United States. I think it's entirely possible that the President could have had an inclination to take that action beforehand and also had that recommendation given to him by the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein. I think that's what happened here, and I think that's exactly what happened. The President probably had the inclination and he had the recommendation, perhaps gave him added confidence in taking that action.
What do you think of the suggestion this week, the possibility that the president may have set up a recording system inside the White House, certainly not denied by the White House spokesman or by the president? And if that's true, do you think that the president, the White House, should turn over any relevant tapes to this investigation to the Congress?
I think that's probably inevitable at this point. If, in fact, there are such recordings, I think those recordings will be subpoenaed, and I think they'll probably have to turn them over.
What do you think of the fact that he may have set up a taping system?
I don't know. You know, we know that there have been instances in the past in which other presidents have made recordings of conversations that have taken place at the White House. And as was made clear earlier in the show, it doesn't always turn out well. It's not necessarily the best idea.
As I discussed with Senator Warner, the Justice Department Attorney General Sessions met with 8 candidates for FBI director yesterday. Your reaction to that list, and I'd also like to ask you about your reaction to Senator Warner, who said he didn't think that, given his recusal from the investigation, Attorney General Sessions should be participating in those interviews.
Look, it looks like a good list. I agree that it needs to be someone who has a lot of credibility in law enforcement. It's one of the reasons why I suggested Merrick Garland the other day. Merrick Garland, in addition to people who are on that list, are all good candidates. And I think the president ought to look for someone who can bring to the job a whole lot of credibility. As to Senator Warner's statement about Jeff Sessions meeting with these candidates, I completely disagree with the suggestion that he has to detach himself from the process of finding an FBI director. As Attorney General, he'll be working with the FBI director in a whole lot of cases involving a whole lot of matters that have nothing to do with anything as to which Attorney General Sessions has recused himself. So I completely disagree. I couldn't disagree more with that suggestion.
All right, let's go back to the Garland suggestion. I mean, for folks who may not be following this as closely as we are, Judge Merrick Garland is a member of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. He was the man that Barack Obama last year, a little over a year ago, nominated to be a Supreme Court justice. Republicans in the Senate blocked it, said they wanted to wait until the election. Are you really serious about the idea that Donald Trump would appoint Merrick Garland to investigate? And what's the reaction you've gotten, if any, from the White House?
You know, first of all, yeah, I think it's a great suggestion. I'm absolutely serious about it. This is a very different post than putting him on the Supreme Court of the United States. If President Trump were to nominate Merrick Garland as FBI director, I think his nomination would be welcomed by people on both sides of the aisle in the Senate. The reason I say that is because this is a man who has a lot of prosecutorial experience, high-profile prosecutorial experience. He went after the Unabomber. He played a key role in the prosecution of Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh. And he's got a strong reputation within the FBI, within the law enforcement community generally. I think this is someone who could be confirmed to that post with a very high degree of bipartisan support.
Yeah, I want to get to that because it seems to me that the suggestion, while you like Garland, is also a statement perhaps that you really don't want to see whoever the replacement for Comey is to be confirmed on a straight party line vote, 52-48, that you really would like to see somebody that at least some Democrats can buy into. Why do you think that's important?
Well, I think in this instance it could be important because as we move forward, the outcome of investigations ought not carry any taint or potential for taint with respect to partisan affiliation. And I think in this instance, there are a whole lot of options available. I think Merrick Garland would be a particularly good option, given that he could have so much support from both sides of the aisle.
Did you get any reaction at all from the White House?
Every indication I've received so far is that they're considering it. I really don't know how far they are in the process or who they will end up choosing. Judge Garland certainly isn't the only one who they could look at. He certainly isn't the only person who could be a good choice in this circumstance.
Finally, I want to turn to what your day job is, and that is legislation. The House just passed Obamacare repeal and replace. You're one of the members of the Senate working group that is going to try to tackle Obamacare reform. The White House was talking about pushing out tax reform, pushing out infrastructure. Question, whether it should or not, realistically, doesn't the furor over the Comey firing and the raised profile for the Russia investigation, doesn't that interfere with the president being able to push, realistically, his legislative agenda?
There are always distractions in any presidential administration. With respect to Obamacare and our efforts to repeal it, you know, unless you're Spinal Tap, you can't turn up the volume on your opposition from 10 to 11. The Democrats are already opposing this effort as much as they possibly can, and that part of it's going to change. What we're trying to do as Republicans is to try to bring about real health care reform, reform of the sort that will reintroduce federalism and free market forces in a way that will bring down the cost of health care to America's middle class, who have suffered badly ever since Obamacare took effect.
But doesn't this, and I understand your point about that it's not like you're getting cooperation from the Democrats at this point, but doesn't it give Democrats something else that they can focus on, they can talk about, that sucks up all the oxygen in Washington instead of it being focused on the legislative agenda?
Sure. Anytime you have something else come along while you're debating legislation, while you're trying to iron out something, it can take some of the momentum away. In this instance, I don't think that's going to make a difference because there's so much momentum behind the Obamacare repeal effort. We're going to get it done one way or another.
Senator Lee, thank you. Thanks for your time. It's always good to talk with you, sir.
Thank you.